All right, hello everyone. I'm back. I have an example for you guys. It is yet another Prashna example of finding a lost laptop. I've actually already done a whole example video on finding a lost laptop when I lost one of my laptops. So definitely go and check out that if you're curious about finding lost objects. And of course, computers and electronics are a big deal in the modern world. So this is a really practical way to use astrology. But all right, so now I got another time where someone asked me, where is my lost computer? So that's the example I'm going to share right now with you guys. Now, in Prajna, when it comes to finding a lost object, in the way that I learned it, Tajika Nilakantha, he emphasizes the fourth house very much. The fourth house is the treasured object, the treasured item, what you really love and desire. The second house can also have to do with like things, your possessions, collectibles, and money as well. But if you're asking about like where is your lost wealth or your lost money or your lost wallet, laptop, these really precious things, look at the fourth house. The fourth house is the attachment, but it's also not just things that you love that make you happy and that you're attached to, but it is also the space deep beneath the ground. And in the old days, people would store their wealth and bury their wealth, deep underground. And so in the old days, once someone died, like a family member, if they died abruptly, then their wealth was gone with them. It was just buried somewhere. No one knew where it was, right? So families and people would frequently come to astrologers in India in the old days. Where is this lost wealth? Where is my ancestors, lost wealth, something like that. So this is kind of how these techniques work, but it actually still somehow works really well in the modern context with like a lost computer. Even though we don't store our computers underground, there's something about the fourth house that represents like these attachments, like these deep things that make us happy. A little bit more in the second house, which is about the things that, it's very close to that. The fourth is, there's a numerical connection, 2 + 2 = 4. They're both connected, but the second house is more about prosperity and like your day-to-day needs and getting what you need to fill your obligations, your food, your drink. That fourth house is like the above and beyond fortune you'll have, and like the really more precious things that you love in your life. So with that being said, when I casted this chart, I saw that, okay, the ruling planet is going to the 11th house. So that's really good. The sign's Virgo, so the ruling planet goes to the 11th house. So that gave me a hint that, well, it looks like they could get it back. Although it's not that close to the 11th cusp, it's closer to the 12th cusp. But it is retrograding away from that towards the 11th. So that still looked good enough. And I saw that the 11th Lord, the moon, is applying to it. So, the 11th Lord is moving towards you. That means the obtaining, the gaining of this thing, because the 11th house is about obtaining things and gaining acquisition. But then seeing 3 planets in the 12th was still kind of concerning to me. That's the house of loss. And there's 3 planets there. And one of them is the second Lord going to the 12th. But then I saw this Jupiter, this really strong Jupiter in the 4th house. So like I was saying, this 4th house, the precious item, when Jupiter is there so strong in the 4th house, and when it's retrograde, in Prajna, a lost item in retrograde is really cool. Retrograde emphasizes you'll probably get it back. You know what I mean? And notice that also the ruling planet was retrograde Mercury and Saturn. Saturn will come in a moment. But that Jupiter there, right, initially, so strong in the 4th house, it indicated to me that, yeah, you are really likely to get this back with that 11th house connection and the Jupiter in the 4th. Looks like you're going to get it back. Here are my notes on this. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see that. So I'll just read it out to you. So yeah, it did appear safe that it would be returned because of the Jupiter and the Lagnesh in the 11th and retrograding towards the 11th Lord. And the 11th Lord in the 11th house is good. But the moon was at 15 degrees and Saturn was at also 15 degrees. So it was in Purna Ittasala. an immediate enclosing applying aspect between the moon and Saturn. So that told me, oh wow, so whoever Saturn is who has it. You know what I mean? Because the moon, you know, this what that told me is that the laptop has been applied to Saturn, you see, and it's pouring it at the solid. When you see them, when they're in that complete applying yoga aspect, when they're within 1 degree of each other, it means it's happening now, you see. So like, she wrote me this, it wasn't like a project where it took me like a week or something to get to it. It was like she wrote me, and I was actually like really out of it, but I just was like, all right, whatever, this is like kind of a more of a friend person, so I wanted to help them. And I was like, okay, right away I see that the Saturn is in that tight aspect. So Saturn has the computer, you see. But it also made me it made me think, oh well, Saturn is to do with loss and things, so it can kind of get in the way of things. So that kind of made me a little bit worried. But as you can see in my notes here, that the laptop was left the way it actually was the person was on the street kind of like typing and stuff, and they're, I guess, maybe like having a drink and hanging out, you know, on the sidewalk somewhere, and there's in a city environment, and then you know, they just got up and then forgot it, you know. And that's like same thing happened to me in my example. These things happen, you know. And so then this older gardener woman, you see Saturn represents older figures. It's in Capricorn, the sign of agriculture and gardening and farming. This older gardener lady picked it up, and she was actually planning on keeping it. See, the moon and Saturn are in an inimical aspect. They're enemies. They're an open enemy aspect relationship. So, you know, that's why I was also concerned. It was like, yeah, it looks like you get it back, but that does concern me with that inimical aspect. They might not want to give it back. But because, you know, the client had asked around so much, and this was kind of like one of those, you know, communities where the word would get around, and there's a lot of coffee shops and cafes and places, and she was saying that she asked around and the word got around, and that she otherwise may not have found it if she wasn't. And that's Mercury is asking around, you know what I mean? And Mercury is the retrograde planet applying to the moon. And so you see that Mercury and moon had a lot to do with her getting the object back. And Mercury and moon is just like casual socializing, you know, coffee shops, this sort of thing. So I told her, I was like, it looks like the laptop is in an orangish, reddish, fiery colored, you know, place, because Sag is actually a little bit hard to tell, but it's usually just orange, but it can also be like reddish or yellowish, because sometimes orange just isn't like an easy color to have. So it's not as common of a natural color. So I told her, but most likely I still love Sag to be just classic orange. You know what I mean? If I could say one color, it is. But the environment, the Lord and all being in Sag, it seemed to hint at that. And it was also in the southwestern direction was where it looked, because the Sagittarius represents the southwestern direction. It did turn out that it was it was next to the public library, which is an orange building. And I'll try to take a moment to throw up this picture. She actually even sent me a picture. It was a bright orange building. So yeah, it turned out it was right there next to that public library, that orange building. And the thing is that also is that libraries are ruled by Jupiter. Libraries represent a place where knowledge or wealth is stored. See, Jupiter rules places where wealth is stored, and also where knowledge is stored, and knowledge is wealth in Jupiter's eyes. So Jupiter actually rules over libraries. Mercury also secondarily represents libraries. But Jupiter's a really yeah, that's an indicator. So I was not here, I was in a different country, but if I was there, I might have think, oh, library, you know. And so yeah, the library was in the southwest direction, a little more west than southwest, but still. And that western factor might have had to do with the Saturn influence, because Saturn rules the west. But yeah, it turned out it was in that direction. She had lost it in the street somehow, but the gardener lady had stumbled upon it, taken it with her. So she found it on the street. She took it with her. See, Saturn also rules the 6th house of thieves. She basically did just steal the laptop. You know what I mean? That's what kind of happened. And she took it with her. And then she went back to her like gardener's house, and that gardener's house was about 500 meters to the south or to the west southwestern direction from the office or the area where this client was at. And so they took it to their gardener's house, which is this old, like really old garden, place that, I haven't seen it, but that's what she told me. Like an old fashioned garden, it has a name, it's one of those sort of things. And so, Capricorn, Saturn, and K2 all speak to old things. And, that Capricorn speaks to agriculture and gardening. It's a female sign. It was a woman who found it. And the storage area in the gardener's house was very old and dilapidated, so perfect Capricorn environment. This was found. And then, yeah, she found out a few days later even that the lady definitely didn't want to give it back. And she was bragging the next day at one of these local cafes or newspaper shops saying, like, I found it, it's mine now, all this stuff. And this person, one of the only reasons that she found it was when she asked around, what the lady was bragging or mentioning it. And this guy that worked at the coffee shop, who she was a really cute guy, he like intervened and was like, wait, I know whose laptop is, you can't take that, blah, blah, blah. And Jupiter represents the ideal man, or, like an ideal, a guy doing good, you know what I mean? And the type of guy you do want. And Jupiter also rules the 7th house of other, cute guys maybe, or other factors. So that's the person who helped her find it. So I don't know, I thought this was a pretty cool example. And, she did seem to get a lot of help from, even though I wasn't able to tell her exactly where it was, I was able to tell her it's in the southwestern direction. You are going to get it back. You need to check by this area, ask around, do these things. And it did help. So sometimes with Prashna, like, you can't see it perfectly clearly, but you can still see it's going to work, and you work through it with the client, and then they find it, you know what I mean? Or they still get the good solution. So, when it comes to Prashnas, really emphasize that 4th house, and you remember to use those applying, separating aspects, and all of that. It was actually lost on the street, like I mentioned, and Libra rules streets and roads, and the 2nd lord is in the 12th house. So there is sort of that connection to her having lost it on the street as well. But yeah, that's about it. Okay, cool. So I hope you guys enjoy that example.